Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 192. So it looks like Brad Edwards, lawyer for Virginia Roberts and some of the other survivors, is going hard in the paint, demanding documents that have to do with Prince Andrew that they feel will be incriminating. Now, we all know that the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, aka Prince Andrew, is an absolute liar at this point. In my opinion, there's no other conclusion that you can come to if you look at all of the evidence that has been provided, and especially when you listen to him speak in his own words in the Emily Maitlis interview. You understand right away that this man is being very loose with the truth, to say the least. And now it certainly looks like Brad Edwards is attempting to pry these documents loose that they feel will be incriminating towards the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family and prove, without a doubt, Virginia's account of what occurred. So this article is from the Daily Mail, and the headline is, "Hand over everything you have on Prince Andrew. Survivors' lawyers demand Jeffrey Epstein's estate hands over tranche of evidence including emails, photos, and surveillance footage." This article was authored by Daniel Bates. Lawyers for Jeffrey Epstein survivors are seeking a huge tranche of evidence from the pedophile's executors that they believe may incriminate Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, the Mail on Sunday can reveal. Well, you got to expect that there'll be a serious pushback from Khan and Indike, because if the evidence that has been provided so far holds true, Khan and Indike are up to their ears in this as well. We know that they were lawyers for Jeffrey Epstein for quite some time, and especially Indike was very cozy with Jeffrey Epstein, running a business out of the building on 66th Street. We know that he was Epstein's in-house lawyer pretty much. He was basically connected to Epstein at the hip. So you know the executors of the estate are going to fight tooth and nail against turning over any sort of documents, especially if they incriminate someone like Prince Andrew or Ghislaine Maxwell. Remember, Ghislaine Maxwell has made her move. She fired off those warning shots about the hacked emails and using Laura Goldman as a mouthpiece to let the executors know and the other players know that she has all the keys to where the bodies are buried, and she knows where the skeletons are. So if you throw her under the bus, you can expect her to do the same, is basically what I got from those emails. I mean, those reports from Laura Goldman that we heard from the Sun. So it's all intertwined here. And you know that Khan and Indike are in the battle of their lives, so they're not going to hand over these documents easily. They're not without a fight, that's for sure. In court papers lodged last week, they have demanded that Epstein's estate hand over any photographs of the Duke, who was friends with the shame multimillionaire financier, pedophile, for more than a decade. The 21-page request for production document filed at the federal court in New York asks for all written or electronic correspondences between Epstein and Andrew, details of the Duke's visits to the pedophiles' homes, and any evidence that he engaged in sexual activity or massages while at them. And I hope that this has to do with Zorro Ranch as well, because we know all of these people have lied about going to Zorro Ranch. We know it for a fact. And then when they get caught, like Eileen Guggenheim, they're like, oh, well, I misremembered. So we've documented all of these liars in the past here on the podcast, in their own words, by the way, right? In their own words. So it's just more of the same when it comes to that kind of stuff here. These people just continue to lie about where they've been, about who they've been with, etc., etc. And if you, as the lawyers for the survivors, aren't able to get the documents, the actual, emails and phone records, etc., there'll be no way to prove that. So this is a shrewd move on the part of Bradley Edwards and company, and I like how aggressive they're being. They're really turning the heat up a notch here, and they understand that these people are on the ropes. these people have, for the first time in their lives, been put on their back foot. They're no longer in control of the narrative anymore, and it terrifies them. It also asks, did surveillance in place at Jeffrey Epstein's home in New York have recording capabilities? Well, we know from several people that have very intimate knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein and what he was involved in, have all come out on record and have stated that the whole entire place was wired up. And you know that he was recording what was going on in these bedrooms. It was all part of that honey trap operation that they were involved in. So I think this is, again, another shrewd question by Edwards and company. Let's get it on record. Did you have the capabilities or not? And what they're doing here is they're putting the estate, again, on their back foot. And when you turn the pressure up, just like in a fight, if you take the center of the ring or the octagon and you're the one that's the aggressor and you're moving forward and you're throwing shots, it's very hard for your opponent to gain their ground and fire back. And that's what's going on here with the lawyers. They're really turning the pressure up and they're really stepping on the gas. If so, please state whether the recordings could be viewed live, where the live feed could be viewed from, where the recordings were stored historically, where the recordings are currently stored, which person or entity has possession or control of the recordings. And this is pretty interesting stuff right there as well, because that's a good question. Where are all of these recordings? Were they picked up when the police raided Jeffrey Epstein's house? Are they in evidence? Are they going to be lost, or is the evidence going to be corrupted like it was on the video in the jail where Epstein supposedly killed himself? So these are all good questions and answers that need to be had. We know that the state has established themselves as somebody or an entity that can't be trusted to hold evidence and not let it get contaminated or destroyed. We saw that with their piss poor work during the whole debacle of Epstein's death. So I think Bradley Edwards and company here, they're, again, it's a good strategy. It's a good game plan that you're seeing come forth from the lawyers, from the survivors. Epstein is known to have installed cameras in his homes with speculation that he stored any compromising footage. While it is not known if any such evidence exists, the document illustrates the zeal with which Epstein survivors are pursuing the Queen's second son, who has strongly rejected any allegations of wrongdoing. Well, yeah, but the real question is, he might strongly deny any allegations of wrongdoing or reject any allegations of wrongdoing, but really what he does is he digs his hole deeper. And the killing shot for him was that interview with Mateless. There's no recovering from that, because anybody who is just neutral to the situation even would watch that interview and say to themselves, what in the hell? Why would they put this guy up there? He's obviously lying. So, you know, he could continue with his path of rejection and denial. That's all that's left to him. What is he going to do? Admit what he was involved in, what he did wrong? Admit that Virginia's telling the truth? There's no way that he can do that at this point, right? So you know that we're not going to hear much from Andrew going forward, but previously with that interview, it was very revealing and very telling. The document was filed by Brad Edwards, the lawyer for Virginia Roberts, who claims that she was coerced by Epstein into having sex with the Duke, a.k.a. Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, on 3 occasions, the first in London when she was 17. Prince Andrew denies her claims. Yeah, you know, look, he had a very, very valid defense, Prince Andrew. You know, he doesn't sweat. That's not him in the picture. His fingers aren't that fat. He was getting pizza. He doesn't wear that kit when he's running around London. He's an honorable guy. You know, all of this stuff. Very credible defense from Prince Andrew. Especially considering that Virginia Roberts showed up with, you know, pictures, receipts, corroborating accounts. Meanwhile, this guy doesn't have one single legitimate alibi. Mr. Edwards has pursued Epstein for 12 years, extracting thousands of pages of damning evidence against him. The latest move suggests he is pursuing the same strategy against Prince Andrew. Yo, it definitely does. And one thing we have learned about Bradley Edwards in our time here on the podcast is once the man has the scent of something, he does not let go. He is a man that has decided that he is taking a stand against this sort of shit, and that he's going to do everything in his power to bring justice to his clients and to the survivors. And we saw him do that with Jeffrey Epstein. We saw it on a regular basis, especially when you read his book, Relentless Pursuit, and you see all the different angles he was pursuing. You come to the conclusion real quick that Bradley Edwards was one of the very few people who had the courage to really chase down Jeffrey Epstein. And if he's taking that same approach here with Prince Andrew, that's only good news for Virginia Roberts and the survivors. The submission was made in the case of an anonymous woman, Priscilla Doe, who was pursuing the millionaire's executors. She claimed she was 20 when Epstein offered to help with her dancing career, but instead coerced her into performing sex acts for his friends. And again, how many times do we have to hear the same story? And it's not even only with Epstein at this point. Hollywood is littered with this sort of thing. All of these rich billionaires in so-called polite society are suspect, in my opinion, at this point. I never had that opinion going into this case, right? I always thought that that stuff was kind of overblown, and there was a lot of jealousy, obviously, etc., etc. But once the curtain has been pulled back a little bit, and once I've done my own research into it, and I've taken a look at what goes on and how these people conduct themselves and what they think is okay and proper, there's only one conclusion that I can come to, and that's all of these people are absolutely disturbed. These billionaires are they're a different class of people. They're a very, very, very mentally disturbed group of people, in my opinion. As well as the Duke, the request extends to several of Epstein's other associates, including U.S. President Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, and Les Wexner, the former owner of the Victoria's Secret lingerie brand. None of them has ever been charged with any offense, and each denies any wrongdoing. This is significant stuff here. And I'm glad Bradley Edwards is asking for these documents too. This is important. We need to have all of this come to light. We have two presidents, one former and one sitting president, caught up in this, a prime minister from Israel and Ehud Barak, and Les Wexner, who runs his own fiefdom out of Columbus. And you're telling me people don't want answers here? You're telling me that your tribalistic pursuits are more important than justice here? It really agitates me when people try and play politics with this. As if both sides of the aisle haven't been involved in all sorts of devious shit year after year after year after year, decade after decade after decade, century after century at this point. These people are corrupt. The people in power are corrupt. And the people that were palling around with Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Ehud Barak, at the very least, folks, okay? And listen to me very clearly. I know that some people still are playing their sides in this case. I see it on Twitter, and I just have to shake my head when I see people engage in it. All right? Both sides were involved in enabling Jeffrey Epstein, okay? Anybody that Jeffrey Epstein was palling around with and using as a vehicle to be included in so-called polite society was an enabler. All right? And at the very least, folks, at the very least, Trump and Clinton both enabled Jeffrey Epstein's behavior by giving him access to them. Point blank, period. Anyone who denies that, anyone who thinks that that's not the case, has no idea what they're talking about, has not been following this case. When you have survivors that have recounted their tales, that have come back and told their tales and explained what happened, and they talk about how Epstein would point at the powerful people he had pictured on the wall and use them as basically a threat for these girls to comply. Now you tell me that those people aren't complicit, that those people didn't enable Jeffrey Epstein's behavior. And then anyone who uses the excuse, well, they didn't know. Yeah, right. These rumors have been flying around since, at the very least, the late 80s about Jeffrey Epstein. And you're telling me someone like Trump or Clinton or Ehud Barak had no idea? And you notice I'm not adding Les Wexner to that because Wexner's on a different level in all of this. I've been saying it from the very, very beginning, folks. Go back and check out the earliest podcast, the earlier podcast, the Daily Drops. I've been all over Wexner from the very beginning. He is a huge part of this. He played a huge role in the facilitating of this whole entire enterprise, in my opinion, and he definitely 100% needs to be brought in on a RICO charge. But it's significant when you have these kind of names involved, folks. It's very significant, and they're people at the highest levels of power. And if they've done nothing wrong, they should have nothing to hide. They should have nothing to fear. And their so-called supporters should have nothing to fear either. I know if it was me and my name was on in this group of people, I would be coming forward the day I heard about it to talk about what I knew. I wouldn't be using lawyers and trying to drag my feet and avoid questioning and ducking a summons and all the other bullshit you see from these clowns. That's not what innocent people do, especially in a case like this. This isn't some kind of business disagreement where you don't think you should be getting sued by one of your partners. We're talking about real people here. We're talking about young girls here and young women who were abused by these people. And the fact that they don't have to answer for it because they can just use their shield of power is galling to me. And I've had enough of it. I've truly had enough of it, folks. It's disgusting and it needs to end. The two-tier justice system needs to be absolutely destroyed. The document lists the dates when Andrew was allegedly at Epstein's Manhattan mansion, private island in the Caribbean, and ranch in New Mexico. I am so glad that they added the New Mexico part to this because, as you all know, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that I went down to the Zorro Ranch personally and checked out the situation. You know that I was in Santa Fe for multiple days talking to some sources. And you know that something severely stinks in New Mexico. That it's a linchpin of this case. I'm convinced of it. And there is so much more to be uncovered there. And it's definitely a thread that really needs to be pulled. And I'm really happy to see that it's listed here and that Bradley Edwards is looking at it as part of this investigation. It asks whether or not Andrew received a massage at any property owned or controlled by Jeffrey Epstein, and whether or not Andrew engaged in any sexual act while at any of Jeffrey Epstein's properties. They're trying to trick him in here, folks, trying to wrangle him in. We already know that the witness Scully has come forward and said that he saw them together, Virginia Roberts and Prince Andrew, and that Andrew was groping her and kissing her. So they're definitely trying to establish more of the fact anyway, that Andrew is a liar, and they have, ample evidence to prove so. And that's what they're doing here with these sorts of questions. And like I said, it's a very bold move. It's a high pressure move from lawyers that understand what they're doing and from lawyers that are looking for results and not fame. It also requests any photographs of Ghislaine Maxwell, the British socialite, aka co-conspirator, who was accused of being Epstein's madam, aka co-conspirator, and any of her employment and payment records. Miss Maxwell, the daughter of late newspaper tycoon Robert Maxwell, denies any wrongdoing. Well, from what hole is she denying that wrongdoing? Because we know that she's nowhere to be seen, and I am almost 100% sure she's not in France at this point. I've put out some feelers to some people, and nobody's been able to bounce back any confirmation on that. So if anyone can definitely confirm that she's in France, that would be awesome. And I suggest, if you can, you contact the Sun and collect that 10,000 pound reward because, 10,000 pounds is 10,000 pounds, right? But honestly, all kidding aside, I really don't think that she's hiding there. I think that she's being protected by very powerful people. And at this point, I would be shocked if she's anywhere besides either the United Kingdom or perhaps in the United States. But my gut says no United States either. So I'm guessing the United Kingdom somewhere would be my guess. No evidence to prove that. No sources said that I have saying that. Nothing like that. That's just my gut feeling that Ghislaine Maxwell is somewhere in the United Kingdom. Epstein allegedly hanged himself in prison last August while awaiting trial on a sex trafficking charge. Lawyers for the survivors are currently negotiating a compensation scheme with his estate valued at more than £500 million. Lisa Bloom, a lawyer representing 5 of Epstein's survivors, said she wants the option to sue the Duke as part of any deal and is certainly not willing to release Prince Andrew from any liability. Does Lisa Bloom have any clients who were allegedly assaulted by Prince Andrew? I mean, I know that the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family is a handsy SOB, but as far as I know, the only person coming forward and making the claim is Virginia Roberts. So I wonder what Lisa Bloom's angle here is. Obviously, in my opinion, she's definitely angling for more attention, and she wants to draw some more attention to her firm. And we know that she loves the spotlight. And we also know that she loves Harvey Weinstein. All right? So anytime Lisa Bloom or Gloria Allred's involved in anything, you know that I'm skeptical. I've been saying this for months on the podcast. I don't like lawyers like that. I don't like fame hounds. I don't like people that put their own reputation and their own firm's ability to secure more money ahead of their victims and the people that they're representing. And in my opinion, that's what Allred and Lisa Bloom do on a regular basis. David Boies, who represents 5 other women, including Miss Roberts, previously said he will not let certain individuals escape liability, naming Andrew in court papers as one example. So that's significant, right? David Boies is making it known that certain people are never going to be allowed to get a sweetheart immunity deal in this case, that they're not going to be protected by the estate, and that Boies is going to chase them down and make sure that they pay for what they did. Joe Exotic of the Windsor family was forced to withdraw from public life after a disastrous Newsnight interview about his friendship with Epstein. In it, he said he would help the authorities with their inquiries into the pedophile, but has since been accused of providing zero cooperation, which he disputes. Last night, a spokesman for the Duke declined to comment. Well, look, let's be real. We all heard him say that he'll cooperate with authorities. We all heard him say that. We all heard him say that he'll do whatever he can to help out the survivors in the case. And then, right away, puts up a wall. The second he got that high profile legal team around him, they told him, zero chance that you're going to talk to anybody else about this. Sit down, shut up, and eat some pudding. Because every time you open your mouth, you make our job harder. Because his own legal team, if you were to able to get the real story from them and sit down and talk to them, I guarantee you, if there was, some way to compel the truth out of people, that they would tell you that they think he's lying even. I don't know anybody, honestly, at this point, who isn't an absolute monarchist who thinks that the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family is telling the truth. And to see Bradley Edwards and David Boies, go so hard in the paint here and come out with these demands, I'm digging it a lot. Because what it means is the heat is being turned up, folks. All of the pressure that you folks are putting on these people, all of the emails, all of the just general interest in the case, where you're moving it to a point where they have to take notice. And that's what's going on. The lawyers recognize that, and they're seizing the opportunity here, and they're pushing their case forward at a relatively high speed now. And we're seeing this advance a lot quicker than I even thought it would. Now, of course, there's still a long way to go, but it's very promising to see the lawyers take such a combative approach here and go on the offensive, as opposed to always being reactionary and worrying about what these high-profile people are going to do to their clients if their clients speak out or tell the truth. You put these people on the defensive, and you start with the full court press and the full frontal the way that's going on now, and it really puts you in a position to come out on top when all is said and done. Because usually, you hear the saying, defense is the best offense. Not in this case. Offense is the best offense in this case. And the more furious you pursue these people, the more they're on their back foot and they're in a place where they're not used to being, because they're used to having complete and utter control of the narrative. And now when the survivors come forward and they start to take control of the narrative and they start going directly to you, the people, well, it becomes a whole different ball game for the abusers and for the predators, because they can't have their friends in the news media control the narrative anymore. And information is worth more than gold, folks. Information, especially these days, is certainly worth more than gold. How long have I been telling you folks that? How long have I been saying that information is the most important commodity to these people? And if they can't control the narrative, and information that they don't agree with or that can shatter the stories that they have told comes out, it is bad news for them, and they have to do what they can to change the narrative back in their favor. And they used to be able to do that by manipulating the media and the news cycle. Well, now that there's independent content creators and so many fantastic investigative journalists out there on this case, it's impossible for them to do that, and they are absolutely terrified by it. All right, folks, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, folks, until tomorrow, I hope you all have a fantastic evening.